You want health, you can't handle the health. Josh Heupel saying this is the healthiest his team has been all year. Caleb, you don't usually hear coaches say that, but when you look at the roster and objectively break it down, it's true. This is a very healthy football team, and part of that's because Cedric Tillman came back, but they should be at their best when 2 versus 1. Tennessee plays Georgia in Athens on Saturday.
Yeah, the only player missing was Warren Burrell because he got hurt at the early part of the year for a season-ending injury. But I mean, after watching Danico Slaughter play at the top cornerback spot last weekend, I think we all agree he's probably the answer, which we didn't think they had an answer at the beginning of the year, which is kind of a scary thought. They put Slaughter in at safety, and then Jalen McCullough comes back at safety. They move Slaughter over to that other spot. I mean, it was Kentucky, a grain of salt, but even though it was against Kentucky, they're supposed to have an NFL quarterback, and he and Brandon Turnage really played lockdown on each side. And so when you combine that with Cedric Tillman, on top of the fact that, Cedric Tillman didn't get a lot of yards or stats last weekend, but I think as I wrote about with Jacob Warren, he was still effective and probably had a role in Hyatt hitting those 2 touchdown passes, but also he was kind of getting back in the groove of things. And like I said, you need to get hit sometimes. He got tackled a few times. So the rush should be shaken off too, just in time for Georgia.
Georgia would have to be considered the favorite, Caleb, both by the odds makers and the fact that they're the number 1 team and it's at their place. But I still think they need to be the aggressor in this game. And I say that specifically talking about their blitz package. I think they need to be very aggressive and attack Tennessee. And some of those mesh points, as they call them, when the decision is made whether or not to hand off or keep on an option or throw in what they run with this RPO style. Uh, Caleb, I think there's a lot of pressure on Georgia's defense to live up to expectations that were super high last year that have taken a bit of a nosedive since.
Yeah, and what are they going to do if they do blitz? I mean, Jalen Hyatt can catch screen passes and be just as effective.
Right.
And same with Jalen Wright as a running back in the backfield. I mean, we think about Jalen Hyatt as a deep threat now, and we should, but the guy's still a slot receiver, and he's still ridiculously fast. And you get him and Squirrel White involved, and I mean, you could screen them to death if they do that. Their secondary is not what it was last year. I thought a part of the press conference that really stood out to me was Josh Heupel was asked why they had so much trouble with Georgia last year. And, when he talked about Florida, he was like, oh, mistakes here or there, or Alabama, the fourth quarter. He was like, they were just good last year. There were no, he said personnel, which is quote code for there was nothing we could do. They were just that good. But you could also tell that, he kind of emphasized that was last year. And, this isn't the same Georgia team as last year by a long shot. And it's not the same Tennessee team either.
I also thought one thing he said, though, that stood out, and you're right, as a whole, it was personnel. But I also thought that it stood out just a little bit, the fact that he said, we made some mistakes too, or something to that effect. And that's something that on our YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and share, by the way. Like, subscribe, and share, that Cooper Mays had referred to as well. And that speaks to the confidence of this team. Cooper didn't come out and say, if we don't make mistakes, we beat Georgia. Now, he didn't say that, but he did feel like that it could have been closer. And the confidence of this team, it seeps out in little bitty bits, but it's there. And I thought Heupel made a slight reference to, they made some mistakes too. So, as far as confidence, I don't think Tennessee has any issue going into Athens whatsoever.
None at all. I've written about. I think I've written probably extensively and bored all of our readers with talking about what's Tennessee's mentality been going to be for this game or this game or this game, and they've really answered every single bell. I mean, looking at it now, the only game that was closer than it should have been was the Pitt game, but that was week 2 on the road, and just a lot of weird mistakes in the second half of the game. I mean, I think if Tennessee and Pitt play right now, I think Tennessee wins by 40. I don't even think it's close.
I agree. I think that is honestly the game that you go back and it's the game that they really gain their confidence. I think there have been 2 significant evolutions of this football team and their psychology. And I think one was when they managed to beat Pitt and it told them that all the hard work will pay off. You can beat good teams. And then two, I think it was Florida, keep your foot on the gas because you shouldn't let anybody creep back into it. I think those are the two main evolutions of this team psychologically, not to get too Freudian on you there.
I agree. And Florida was more the coaches taking their foot off the gas than it was the players, if we're going to be honest. That fourth down, Heupel went for it late in the game before Florida scored that touchdown and got the onside kick. So I agree. And then, I mean, they had the bye, and then they came out in LSU and just, I mean, LSU made the cardinal sin of what we learned with LSU was you make some early mistakes against this Tennessee team. They're going to turn what could be a close game into a 40-point blowout. And so I think like that's the other thing Georgia has to worry about. What if they make a couple of mistakes early? I mean, Tennessee is really showing they can pile it on. And yes, Alabama came back from 28 to 10 down, but that's Alabama. It was a back and forth game the whole time. But I think we agreed that Tennessee honestly made as many mistakes in that Alabama game as Alabama did. And so they helped Alabama stay in the game too. And so I go and look at this Georgia game, and I'm with you. I mean, they've been playing with fire for a lot of the year. Georgia has. They even struggled at times. If we saw that Florida offense, now yes, they put 33 points up on Tennessee, but they shouldn't have been able to do what they did to Georgia last weekend. And if they can do that to Georgia, what can Tennessee's offense do to Georgia?
No, I'm with you. I feel like there is more pressure on Georgia for whatever reason
Mm-hmm.
than there is on Tennessee in this game. Darnell Wright, major kudos. I go back over the course of this coaching staff because Darnell Wright got the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Year or the Week award. And I think it's the second time he's won it this year. I go back to this entire coaching staff. The one mistake they made was they played Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker, right? We can agree with that as far as a big philosophical mistake. That's one in a year and a half. The other one that I thought they were making was moving Darnell Wright from left tackle to right tackle. Dave's dead wrong. Dave's not a coach. The left tackle position's been great. The right tackle position's been fantastic. I mean, everything they have done to this point, Caleb, has turned up positive, and that's just another example of it. David's saying go big orange. I think they are going to go in Athens. But Caleb, I mean, everything's gone. They've made the right calls all across the board.
Yeah, almost everything they've done has worked out. I throw in another one. I think last weekend proved that not starting Nico Slaughter at cornerback at the beginning of the year was a mistake.
That's
Too. He was better than Warren Burrell was as the number one corner. Warren Burrell struggled. I defended him, but Nico Slaughter was playing shutdown defense on Saturday. So yeah, but you're right. Outside of that, moving Darnell Wright over to right tackle, it's really hard to stress how good this offensive line has been this year. And so I think that Tennessee has. I think this will be the best test for them. I mean, but I don't want to say this is going to be the best test for the offensive line. Alabama should have been the best test. Alabama's got the best pass rush in college football.
No, you're right. You're right, and they held them in check. Will Anderson, a generational type of player. Trevor said, I think Georgia blitzes a ton on Saturday, something Bama did not. Trevor, I think you're absolutely right. If you just tuned in, I think they're going to try to blitz and get on Tennessee of those mesh points with the exchange, and the decision has to be made by Hendon Hooker whether to give the ball up, keep, or throw, essentially. And that is, if I'm Georgia, that's how I'm attacking Tennessee. Now, they may still, like Caleb pointed out, they may still be able to beat them with the screen pass, or Jalen Hyatt might just beat them deep. But if you play straight up and play more coverage, I just don't see how that's going to work out. It hasn't worked out for anybody. And Caleb, I'm not even talking about dropping into coverage. I'm just talking about playing coverage, sending forward regularly.
Yeah, and if they blitz, I mean, forget even the screen passes. Hendon Hooker's been great finding the gaps to run up the middle with when he takes off. I mean, he's been really good at that this year.
Yep.
They blitz. There's going to be an opening, and then Hendon Hooker, depending on if Georgia plays man on the outside, I mean, you're not talking 5-yard gains at that point. You're talking 25-yard gains with Hooker at quarterback. So that's a really dangerous thing for them to do. Last year, I would have said this would be a problem for Tennessee because Hooker's pocket presence was a little bit, that was his one weakness last year. Tennessee got sacked a lot last year. They don't, I mean, there was one last Saturday against Kentucky, Hooker got sacked. That was the first sack that I could actually say this year was his fault, where he held onto the ball too long and didn't make the right, and didn't get rid of it quickly or didn't step the right way in the pocket. But that's one time this year, and it was a problem all the time last year, and he's getting rid of the ball quickly. Those touchdown passes to Jalen Hyatt, it's not like he's dropping back waiting for the play to develop. He's getting rid of it within 3-4 seconds when he throws it. So
love the confidence about this football team. Does Slaughter start at corner this week? Trevor asked. I would certainly think so, right?
Oh, I would definitely think so. I mean, even with Kamal Hayden and Christian Charles, if they're getting healthy, what you saw with Slaughter last week, he's earned the right to start. And, just that's kind of underrated how historic of a performance the secondary put on, only in the sense of, again, we're all talking this week. Like, I think Tennessee just single-handedly killed Will Levis's draft stock. They just single-handedly knocked him out of the first round. And so that's hard to do.
Well, it should be an interesting game, no doubt about it. 2 versus 1. We'll be with you each and every weekday at 8:30. Hit that like, subscribe, and share button. And also turn your notifications on, please, if you haven't already, because we pop on from time to time when news happens, especially after Josh Heupel's press conferences is on a Monday. So Trevor lastly saying if Tennessee can stop the run against Georgia, I love their chances. Yes. Stetson Bennett doesn't win a national championship last year if it's all about Stetson Bennett. He doesn't. Gosh,
the key is Byron Young and Tyler Barron have to get pressure. Tennessee's got to get pressure without blitzing. That's kind of the goal in this one. And that'll be tough, but I think they can do it.
It's totally escaping me. Who was the quarterback for the Ravens that won a championship?
Joe Flacco? Hail Flacco? Hail Fluco?
Yeah. That's the type of guy that Stetson Bennett is. He's not going to go out and win you games, but he can be that type of caretaker.
But he might close his eyes and throw a 70-yard pass against the Broncos that Raheem Moore totally misplays. And, I'm sorry, I remember that Ravens Super Bowl when they beat Denver. That was the luckiest touchdown pass I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. So, so the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, that's debatable, but no offense to either of these guys, but Stetson Bennett is the worst quarterback to win a college football championship since Georgia did it last.
I would say in the playoff era. I mean, I still might take Stetson Bennett over Greg McElroy.
Yeah,
and I like Greg McElroy.
Similar. I'll call that a push. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Like, subscribe, and share. Turn the notifications on so you can hear us. This has been a presentation